Poor girl. Good girl. Hey friends, hope everybody's doing good. Martyupnorth coming at you from my backyard on March 11th. I follow quite a few different sites on social media on outdoor activities. You know, I follow a site on Facebook called Backpacking in the Canadian Rockies, which is where I do most of my hiking. And I can tell people are getting antsy and anxious and want to get out there. And people are starting to plan their trips. And I see a common question, which is, when can you start hiking in the Canadian Rockies? I mean, you can hike year round if you want to, if you hike in the winter, but I think the question is specifically geared. People are coming from other parts of the province or parts of the country, and they want to come to Alberta and British Columbia, and they want to go hiking in the Rockies, and they're asking, when can you start hiking in the summer season? And I'm going to try and answer that question for you. So I've been hiking in the Rockies for about 35 years, and I keep a log of when I've done hikes and at what time, you know, the exact dates and the conditions that I've encountered. So I'm basing my answer on some of that experience. But I'm going to tell you there's 5 factors that affect when you can start to safely hike in the Canadian Rockies. And more or less in order of importance, they're weather, the temperature, the snowpack, the runoff from the mountains, road access, and damage to infrastructure. So I'm going to touch on all 5 of those real quick. So right up on the chart, right off the bat, is I'm showing you right now is a weather records for, I picked the town of Jasper, which I think is kind of representative. It's somewhere in the middle of the Rocky Range, and it's in Alberta. So I picked Jasper, and I just want to show you that. So you can see that the temperature here in Alberta, we get a lot of snow in the mountains in particular, and the temperature is going to be cold right until, you know, mid-May, June. So by mid-May, June, you can expect daytime temperatures to be, you know, in the teens in Celsius and 15 to 20 degrees Celsius, and you're still going to get nighttime temperatures that can get as low, you know, an average of about 5 degrees Celsius, but the nighttime temperatures are going to get still in the zeros. In fact, you can get 0 degrees at night year round. But the reason I'm talking about the temperature is because the temperature has a direct impact on the amount of snow that melts. So the key to hiking in the mountains is that you have to deal with the snow. So I think that's the question. That's why that's one of the things that people are asking about. They don't want to go with snowshoes. So when can you go without snowshoes? And that depends on when the passes are going to be clear of snow. And so the passes are the high point in the mountains. And so the passes are going to be clear of snow when the snow starts to melt, and it depends on the accumulation. So the second table that I have here, I'm showing you a table, which is it's just a pure table of ranking of passes based on elevation, and then I color coded them. So my experience is that a mountain pass that is at about 2,400 meters, which is a typical mountain pass, will be clear of snow 50% of the time, 50% of the years by mid-July. So that sounds extreme, but that's based on experience. Right here, I'm showing you a video. This is me July 9th last year, trying to get through Pipestone Pass, and there was still snow at Pipestone. So this is my table. So you can start. So if you come too early and you start too early, let's say you're trying to start in June, the first problem you're going to encounter in June are snow in mountain passes. Now, it's not impossible to overcome. If you don't bring snowshoes, you can still get past most of the snow in mountain passes in mid-June, July, up to mid-July. But sometimes you'll be post-holing, meaning you'll sink and it'll be tough traveling, but you will get past. Now, closely related to the snow melt is the fact that shortly after the snow is starting to melt, the rivers come up. So the more snow melts, the higher the rivers become. So your first problem in the mountains early in the season is overcoming the snow in the pass. But after that, the second problem is the creeks start to overflow. Now, if you're hiking only on popular trails, or mostly on popular trails, you know, you're doing the Skyline or the Brazu or whatever, they're well maintained. They have bridges on over the major creeks, and so fording rivers is not a big deal. But if you're going off the beaten path, certain sections of the GDT, the Front Range of Banff, Kananaskis Country, Wilmore Wilderness, a lot of places like that, you have rivers that are not bridged that require fording, and fording rivers in July can be very challenging. And so rivers tend to be at their lowest in May, June, and then start to climb in July and August, and will crest in August. So a lot of rivers, even as late as August, are still flowing very hard, and then they'll start to come down. So if you're going in an area, and I'd say that so it depends on the area they're going in. So maybe your number one problem is the snow in the mountain pass or the rivers to ford. I would say of the two, fording rivers is the most dangerous one. So when you're planning your trip, if you think you're going to go somewhere where you have to ford a lot of rivers, you're going to start a little bit later. And I'll summarize this after. Okay, so number one is temperature. You know, you got cold nights and warm days, which affects snow melt, which lowers the snow in the higher passes, which ultimately affects the amount of runoff. So that's, you know, three things: temperature, snowpack, and melt runoff. But number four is damage to infrastructure. So no matter how well we build these trails and the bridges and whatnot, in the fall or in the spring when there's major runoff, bridges get damaged, trails get washed out, there's windfall, there's damage from avalanches, there's all sorts of things like that. And so even on a popular, well-maintained trail, it might take a bit of time for the crews from Parks Canada and volunteers to go and start clearing the trail. So even though a trail might be clear in June, July, there might still be some damage. So that affects, but that's a lesser impact, but it's still an impact. Now, trust me, people get out there so quickly that damage gets reported and gets repaired. So if you read on a report that a bridge is out somewhere in June, chances are by July, somebody will have figured out, you know, dropped a tree across a creek or done something else or found a solution to that problem. But damage to infrastructure is a problem. Now, the fifth thing that affects when you can start hiking is road closures. And there's two kinds of road closures, well, maybe three kinds of road closures. One is there are seasonal road closures. You know, in Kananaskis, some roads, the government doesn't want to maintain and remove the snow in the winter, so the roads are closed, you know, usually around December, and then reopen around mid-June, July, sometimes even later. So that's one kind of road closure. The other kind of road closure is further up north. We have road bans, which won't affect somebody driving in a car, but road bans are common on dirt roads in Alberta and British Columbia, because when the snow is melting and the ice is melting, the roads become soft until they have a chance to properly dry. So local municipalities and government will impose road bans, limiting traffic on those roads. But that's not a big problem for people in cars. It's mostly a problem for trucks. But those roads also, the snow needs to be removed. The roads are going to be rutted up. There's going to be potholes. And so if you don't have a good vehicle, if you don't have a pickup truck, if you just have a small car, I would say the roads are going to be a general problem very early in the season. Piece it all together: temperature outside at night and during the day, the amount of snow that you'll encounter on the passes, which are typically the highest spot that you will travel, the amount of runoff and the strength of the creeks, the damage to infrastructure, and access by roads. I would say that for somebody who is not local, who's coming to visit Alberta, if you want to absolutely lower your chances of being disappointed, I would not attempt too many trails in Alberta until about July, the first week in July. Now, if you're skilled and you have experience and you're willing to put up with a little bit of risk and a little bit of misery and all those things, by all means, you can start hiking in mid-June. I've actually passed some mountain passes very early on. But my advice is keep an eye on the billboards and on the social media. Send me a note. And but at this time, 2-3 months in advance, don't get overly aggressive. I would not plan anything until about the first week of July. Hope that helps. Just a quick explanation about access to hiking in the mountains in Alberta. There are some challenges, nothing that can't be overcome. If you like the video, give me a like, hit that subscribe button, and by all means give me a bunch of comments. I love the comments. And this is Marty saying, don't be discouraged, get off the beaten path.